Earth's mightiest heroes. Now with a name like that, it's no surprise that this roster of heroes is one of the most powerful hero teams out there. With a main team consisting of the powerful Thor, Iron Man, She-Hulk, and more, this team is packed to the brim with ridiculously strong heroes. However, that doesn't mean that their lesser known members in the reserves aren't just as powerful. Now what is going on, all you nerdy folk out there? My name is Jack and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. Now you've probably already guessed it, but today we're going to be taking a look at some of the most powerful Avengers out there. We'll be seeing all sorts of Avengers pop up on this list today across multiple iterations and alternate teams as well. And if you like hearing us talk about the Avengers and all things Marvel, then after this video you should definitely check out our top 10 Marvel playlist located on our channel, or honestly if you're feeling up to it, why not just head to our channel under videos and just scroll through until you find something that catches your eye. Now with that in mind, let's start talking Avengers, everyone. Number 10, Quasar. Wendell Vaughn was once a run-of-the-mill S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who was placed in charge of guarding the quantum bands until one fateful day that changed his life forever. One day, AIM androids were sent to steal the bands, and William Wesley had unfortunately passed away just an hour before, so in order to protect them, Wendell put them on himself, and thanks to his lack of killer instincts, he was able to not only control the power of the bands, but also defeat the AIM androids. Now if you're not familiar with the power of the quantum bands, let me give you a bit of a rundown. The quantum bands draw quantum energy from the universe, and specifically it taps into the quantum zone. With this, Quasar is capable of controlling all forms of energy. Now similar to DC's Green Lantern, he can also use energy to create force fields, armor, and weapons, as well as fly, teleport into the quantum zone, and communicate via radio waves. As a longtime fan of the Avengers, Quasar was honored when Captain America personally invited him to join the team, and as a part of the team he would go on to fight with them in the Kree/Shi'ar war. Unfortunately, Quasar's duties as the protector of the universe would limit his involvement thereafter though. Check him out in his first appearance as Marvel Boy in 1978's Captain America number 217. Number 9. Mockingbird. Born and raised in San Diego, Barbara Bobby Morse was first introduced as a highly trained S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and sidekick of Kazar. However, it wasn't until much later in the Marvel Team-Up series that Morse began using the Mockingbird alias. Now she doesn't actually possess any superpowers, however thanks to being injected by a formula, she was bestowed super strength, enhanced agility, and a regenerative healing factor. Couple all that with her extensive training in both hand-to-hand combat and weaponry, and that is a recipe for a valuable member of the Avengers. Now after eloping with Hawkeye, the two were notified of the formation of the West Coast Avengers, and several Avengers, including Mockingbird herself, left to join the new squad, and her and Hawkeye served as this cute little motivating force for the team. Skip ahead a bit and we see Hawkeye and Mockingbird train the new Great Lakes Avengers, and then during the wake of the Avengers receiving a United Nations charter, both active teams were actually revamped, and Bobby received only one vote to become an active member of the Great Lakes Avengers and ended up going back to the West Coast Avengers. Obviously there's a whole lot more to her story, so feel free to check it out for yourself, starting with her first appearance as Mockingbird in 1980's Marvel Team-Up number 95. Number 8. Spectrum. Born and raised in New Orleans, Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blasts, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time, becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after way too many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Valdez, son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they are working to keep people safe to this very day. Now if you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Number 7. Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, the ionic energy-powered superhero Simon Williams, who has a long history with the Avengers that goes all the way back to his debut. Now Simon inherited his father's company Williams Innovations and ended up running it straight into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was then later arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo as a plot against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power up beyond the capabilities of normal humans. One of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and even possibly Sentry, as one time he literally knocked out Thor with just one punch, and this is a result of the experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, agility, and then flight and reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy including antimatter, is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wants to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or even oxygen to survive, all thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers number 9. Number 6. Crystal. The first Inhuman to appear on this list today, Crystal is a part of the royal family of Attilan and was subjected to the Terrigen Mist when she was very young, which gave her some pretty cool mental powers. Put simply, she's just basically the Avatar. She has control over the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air, which is done through psionic interactions with the substance on an atomic level. However, these 4 elements aren't where her control ends, because she also is capable of electrokinesis, magnetokinesis, thermokinesis, and cryokinesis. During her tenure with the Avengers taking place during the Operation Galactic Storm, she developed an attraction with teammate Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. This relationship was a bit complicated as Pietro was trying to fix their marriage, and the available and aggressive Cersei pursuing Dane at the time as well. Crystal recommitted to Pietro when he returned to the Avengers, and Dane and Cersei were soon transported to another universe, ending their thoughts of an affair completely. Crystal was among the Avengers who seemingly sacrificed themselves to end the menace called Onslaught. Actually transported to a different reality created by Franklin Richards, Crystal was restored when the heroes returned. When the heroes who were believed to be dead returned to Earth, Crystal and Quicksilver were quickly reunited and both helped the Avengers reassemble. Crystal, however, returned to Attilan where she remained beside the royal family, raising Luna. Check out her story for yourself starting with 1965's Fantastic Four, number 45. Number 5. Miss America. Raised in a dimension outside of time and space known as the Utopian Parallel, America Chavez is one of Marvel's newer teen heroes, and she is a powerhouse to say the least. She's been a member of multiple super teams including the Young Avengers, A-Force, the West Coast Avengers, and the Ultimates, and belongs to the younger generation of heroes who will potentially be the stars of Marvel stories in the future. Chavez gained her powers as a young girl from a magical entity that resided where she lived, and these powers are superhuman strength and speed, star portal creation which allows her to travel the multiverse, and of course, hypercosmic awareness alongside a number of other powers and abilities. When her dimension was threatened by black holes, her mother sacrificed themselves to save it, and Chavez ran away from home to travel across dimensions. This began her journey both literally and emotionally from girl to superhero. Since her introduction, America has taken part in many huge plot points, one of the biggest being her role in Civil War II. Now I won't spoil too much of it for you because it absolutely deserves a read, but let's just say she was smart enough to outsmart Captain Marvel and Spectrum. Appearing for the first time in 2011's Avengers number 1, why not check her out for yourself? Number 4. Captain Universe. Tamara DeVoe, aka Captain Universe, was once a woman who suffered from some pretty bad amnesia after a car crash. Although that's not the greatest outcome, she was also imbued with the power of the Enigma Force in the aftermath, so I guess that's somewhat of a bright side. Now what's the Enigma Force? Well, it is a mystical energy that passes through the microverse in order to protect and preserve the microverse. The wielders of this force are imbued with the Unipower, a facet of the Enigma Force that gives the wielder some pretty sweet powers. In Tamara's case, she was given the ability to manipulate matter and energy, and can also use Univision, which allows her to sense things on a subatomic level or at great distances, or she can use it to literally force someone to tell the truth. Her first mission with the Avengers was actually on Mars to stop the powerful beings Ex Nihilo, Abyss, and Aleph from terraforming the Earth in their image. When Tamara approached them, both Nihilo and Abyss recognized her as their literal goddess and the physical manifestation of the universe itself, so they immediately submitted and just agreed to her terms. However, Aleph did not and just straight up attacked her. Captain Universe easily burned the robot to ashes with a single touch, and the Avengers returned to Earth after a very easy job well done. That wasn't her only mission with the team though, but I will let you check that one out for yourself. Give her story a read starting with 2013's Avengers Volume 5, number 1. Number 3. Ares. Inspired by a Greek god of the same name, Ares was initially introduced as an antagonist to Thor. However, in 2006, Ares became more of an anti-hero, which inevitably led to him joining forces with the Avengers. Thanks to his Olympian physiology, Ares possesses superhuman strength, speed, stamina, durability, and agility, and is a true immortal, meaning that he can't die by any conventional means. Not only that, Ares has the ability to manipulate war, strife, combat, and all forms of conflict, including mental, physical, spiritual, and conceptual ones, regardless of the area and numbers involved, meaning he can control how they progress. Immediately following the superhero civil war over its legislation, Iron Man and Ms. Marvel traveled to Ares' construction site to recruit him for their new Avengers team. Agreeing that the heroes had ruined his civilian cover, Ares eventually agreed to join the team after Iron Man threatened to deport him to Olympus if he didn't register with the US government and promised a salary similar to that of of his construction job. He played a pivotal role in Ultron's defeat and was also largely responsible for bringing down Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. That victory was sadly bittersweet though, because it led to his death, as he was just straight up ripped completely in half. Don't worry though, like I said, he is a god, so he was resurrected not too long after. Check out his entire story for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in the Golden Age in 1942's Comedy Comics number 10. Number 2. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth like Hercules and of course Gilgamesh, which kind of explains his name and why he goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals were born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities including super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of any of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and any other godlike being. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, which coupled with his imperviousness to damage makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, number 13. Number 1. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marvel, was known as a child prodigy from an early age and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor, but unfortunately there was an unexpected explosion and both he and his partner Connor Sims were exposed to the radiation. Now Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body just disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength that rivals both the Hulk and Thor, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is also pretty much immortal as he ages much slower than the normal human, making him a serious force to be reckoned with. As a part of the mighty Avengers, both the 1970s and the one led by Luke Cage and the Ultimates, we have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew straight through Shumagorath's head because why not, right? Not only that, he has been seen able to withstand the blast of a hydrogen bomb and can even go toe-to-toe with Captain Marvel and come out relatively unscathed. So yeah, he deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, number 1.
Before she got somewhat nerfed for some reason, I would have argued that Photon, or Spectrum as she's also been known, aka the hero Monica Rambeau, would be up there as one of the most powerful Avengers we've ever seen. Like some of the others in the running that we'll be considering in this video for the top spot, Monica was for a brief time team leader as well. Her powers came from extra-dimensional energy that she was exposed to when she used her hands to destroy an energy disruptor device during her time working as a captain for the New Orleans Harbor Patrol. Her newfound powers allowed her to turn into any type of energy imaginable. She could also channel energy emitted in the form of powerful blasts and boost the attacks of her fellow heroes by infusing them with energy. For a time, she also possessed cosmic awareness and even was considered immortal while in her energy form. Lately, she hasn't appeared to be quite as strong, and I'm not even sure if we still consider her immortal, but either way, I'd still consider Monica's energy-based powers to be some of the greatest out there, considering that she is not tied to one type of energy and can even transform only parts and not all of her body into energy due to her experience. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us that you love us by clicking that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any good nerdy content. Some might consider Iron Man as a top contender for most powerful Avenger due to his genius, which allows Tony Stark to build suits of armor for almost every occasion and emergency scenario you could think of. During Null's invasion of Earth in the King in Black event, Iron Man would go on to create a suit of armor that wasn't even fully technological, showing how flexible and resourceful he could be in almost any situation. This suit was known as the Extremebiote and combined the techno-organic Extremis virus with one of Null's dragon symbiotes. Initially, Tony had tried to use the Extremis virus to reprogram the DNA of the symbiote, thereby severing its connection to Null so that he might use it to save the life of fellow hero Eddie Brock. This failed as the symbiote's connection was not successfully severed, but after Dylan Brock was able to sever the symbiote's ties, Iron Man was actually able to gain full control of it and use the symbiote as part of his Extremiote armor. So it didn't work in saving Eddie, but hey, he got some cool armor out of it. In recent years, Tony has also used his genius combined with found celestial tech to create Celestial Hulkbuster. However, this armor ended up being destroyed by Thor. If we're considering Tony to be in the running for the most powerful Avenger title, then I think it's only fair that we mention another Avenger who I would deem Tony's equal. If not, honestly, his better. King T'Challa of Wakanda, aka Black Panther. I know this is gonna be a controversial point, but hey, I just think Black Panther's better overall. Sorry, Iron Man fans. The thing that makes Black Panther stand out is that he is not only a genius, but also has fighting prowess and strength, and like Tony, is also extremely wealthy. Not only that, but he also typically comes with a ton of influence as well as King of Wakanda, when he's serving as king, that is, and isn't like, you know, being hunted in his own country. But hey, we're talking about in general, we're talking about generalizations here, where they're at right now in the comics. Captain Marvel is definitely one of the greatest powerhouses on the team. Currently in the comics, she's actually the team leader, not just a powerful superhero in terms of her cosmic abilities, but also a powerful leader who was voted into the role by her peers, as was revealed at the beginning of the newest Avengers series. I would definitely say we need to consider Captain Marvel as a top contender for the most powerful Avenger out there. When it comes to Captain Marvel's abilities, Carol initially got her powers in the comics from exposure to an exploding psyche magnetron, which granted her wish to be as powerful as her hero slash mentor slash former love, Kree hero Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel. Over the years, however, this version of the story was somewhat downplayed as we learned that Carol actually was also part Kree, with her mom, Marielle, secretly being a Kree captain who is basically sent to Earth to get close to the humans and bear a hybrid child with one of them. Hulk often boasts of being the strongest there is, and if we're comparing him to everyone else who has come before on this list, even Tony with his Celestial Hulkbuster, and even the cosmic power of Carol, who it's been established in the comics he could easily beat in a one-on-one fight, I would say, you know, that's true. He's the strongest there is to this point. However, there are those who might be able to influence him using other means, and just because he has the biggest muscles doesn't mean he's always the most powerful Avenger in the room. Hulk can smash, I'll give him that, and there aren't many who can stand up against him, but I'll wager Invisible Woman could be one of the few out there. Now this is based on the fact that I've seen her threaten her opponent's life with her powers without needing to do really much of anything. She just kind of, look, I could just do this and then you're done. Invisible Woman can create force fields and shields, and she can use them to do things like pop your head and burst your brain if she wanted to. While Hulk's rage knows no bounds, if Invisible Woman was feeling particularly rage-filled, I think she'd be even more of a threat. Along with her husband, Mr. Fantastic, Sue had a period where she left the Fantastic Four and for a brief time during the late 80s joined up with the Avengers team, becoming a part-time member, in case you forgot. Oddly enough, I feel like Scarlet Witch is always forgotten when it comes to these kinds of lists where we talk about powerful Avengers. I don't know why either, really. Wanda's an extremely powerful member of the Avengers who also for a while was a team leader. Not surprising when you consider how much of a tank she is. Lately in the comics, Scarlet Witch has really been coming into her power, no longer allowing herself to be tormented by her past. So now she warps reality and also doesn't carry the heavy burden of guilt, which I think makes her even more powerful and in charge, to be honest. It's possible that Scarlet Witch, with her chaos magic, now also channeling the power of Chthon, who remains imprisoned within the Darkhold inside her, is the most powerful Avenger of all time, especially if we're considering the now. Considered one of the most powerful heroes in general, especially given his god and sometimes even all-father status, is Thor. Let's remember that Thor was the one who destroyed Iron Man's Celestial Hulkbuster suit, which is honestly pretty wild. Thor is also currently being elevated and redefined as a character right now thanks to the current Immortal Thor comic, so I mean it's a great time for Thor fans. While I want to say that Wanda could take him after the events of Immortal Thor, I'm honestly not sure that that will be possible. It's like a very good time for both those heroes, so it's hard for me to put one above the other, but there we go. Ex Nihilo is a character that we don't often talk about on the channel, probably because he hasn't been seen in the comics since, well, 2015. And you know, he's also dead, I believe, after sacrificing himself when the Avengers faced the Beyonders. However, he could also be alive somewhere out there in the cosmos after the events of Secret Wars being recreated when the entire multiverse was rebuilt, 2015 Secret Wars that is. Ex Nihilo has the power to create entire worlds. He can create and manipulate matter, also affecting its growth by manipulating time as well to an extent. The ability to create on the scale he is capable of makes him one of the most powerful card-carrying members to have existed, whether or not he exists today. While while Nihilo has the power to create worlds. Strange has demonstrated in the past having the power to destroy them. I mean, here's the thing. Doctor Strange could probably beat everyone on this list with the right writer. He has magic, and I feel like at the end of the day, magic reigns supreme. For me, it's a really tough pick between these last few superheroes we've discussed. I could see Thor, Ex Nihilo, or Strange being considered as the most powerful member of the Avengers team. Even Wanda could honestly be in the running, considering her newfound power and sense of self-worth, but at the end of the day, Doctor Strange just has more knowledge and more skill, I think, as a magic user. Doctor Strange is not often thought of when we think of the Avengers team because, well, he hasn't been featured on the main roster, okay? But he has been a part of spin-off Avengers teams, and he's actually a reserve member for the main team, who is sometimes called in. He's also offered assistance from time to time as sort of a consultant for many teams, including the Avengers. I think ultimately Doctor Strange is simply too powerful and like kinda too busy as Sorcerer Supreme to really be a main roster member for the Avengers team. But maybe one day we'll see the strongest Avenger join that main roster. I know I'd love to see it. I'd love to see an Avengers team led by Doctor Strange. That would be interesting.
Heroes like Eric Brooks, or as most of us know him, Blade. Blade has been around since 1973, so it actually took me by surprise when I learned that he didn't become an actual mainline Avenger until Avengers Volume 8, number 12. Born with an extremely unique vampire physiology, Eric used his powers to wipe out evil vampires, taking on the title of Daywalker. Now, to be fair, he was once part of the Mighty Avengers before being invited to join the main Avengers team by Black Panther. But while on the Avengers, he did a lot. Like, I mean a lot. He ended a vampire civil war, saved Ghost Rider in hell, battled the Dark Elf Malekith in the War of the Realms, helped stop the Egyptian god Khonshu from taking over the entire Earth, and he recruited Dracula and his vampire nation to help fight Null, the symbiote god, and King in Black. Blade came to the Avengers with a heck of a lot of supernatural expertise, and he was amazing on the team until he left to be Dracula's own sheriff, which... what? Roberto da Costa, the mutant who also goes by the name Sunspot, first ever joined the Avengers, accepting Captain America's offer alongside the mutant Cannonball. Sunspot came across as a bit of a comedic member of the team, and he didn't really seem to take his Avenger status as seriously as others did, but that pretty quickly turned around. Where Iron Man used to fill in the laid-back billionaire role on the team, Roberto stepped into that role pretty smoothly and got the team out of quite a few problematic moments. It's arguable to say that he really stepped into his own as an Avenger when he bought the whole of AIM and used the organization to create his own Avengers team in New Avengers Volume 4, and then again in US Avengers. His time as an Avenger not only boosted up his status from a C-list hero to one in the spotlight, but it also brought multiple creative Avengers series, which as comic book fans is something that we will not be upset about, ever. Maya Lopez, also known as Echo, is honestly really cool. She has really cool photographic reflexes just like Taskmaster. She's been Ronin for a time and even been a host for the Phoenix Force, and she also became an Avenger. Now, initially Maya was actually a bit of a villain, being manipulated by the Kingpin in order to try and take down Daredevil. Luckily though, Maya was able to discover the truth about Kingpin and the lies he fed her, and that pushed her into reshifting her focus to become a hero. It was from there that she became Ronin, and thanks to a good old recommendation from Daredevil himself, she met up with Captain America and started working with the New Avengers in 2005. She would eventually be brought down by Elektra, and she would eventually be saved and revived, helped out during World War Hulk, Secret Invasion, and she even worked very closely with Moon Knight for a while before being revived yet again, and was eventually granted the Phoenix Force. She would eventually join the actual true Avengers in Avengers Volume 8, number 54 from 2022, facing the multiversal Masters of Evil. Next up, a former Marine and scientist turned superhero, Adam Brashear is not only one of the strongest heavy hitters in Marvel Comics, but he is also one of the smartest characters around. Blue Marvel didn't actually make his debut in Marvel Comics until 2008, but when he showed up, his origin story retroactively placed him in the Marvel Universe way back in the day. His origins take place in the 1960s during a project to use antimatter as an energy source. Adam and his best friend Connor were caught in an explosion that turned Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, which should in theory pretty much impossible, and it gave him an insane amount of power. Bashir would rejoin the superhero community alongside Luke Cage's 1970s Mighty Avengers, which in the real world happened in 2014, before he went on to join with Captain Marvel and Black Panther on the Avengers adjacent team known as the Ultimates in 2016, and most recently, he joined the Defenders and went rather, beyond. Next up, Eden Fessy, aka Manifold, first appeared as an incredibly underrated hero in Jonathan Hickman and Brian Michael Bendis' Secret Warriors series, alongside a group of other legacy heroes recruited by Nick Fury in 2009. Now, Manifold is a mutant with the insanely godlike ability to manipulate space, which he most often uses as a teleporter. He was actually the student to another mutant teleporter known as Gateway, but following with writer Jonathan Hickman, Manifold joined the Avengers in Avengers Volume 5 in 2014/2015 for one of the greatest Avengers runs we have had in a long time. As the Avengers expanded to a bigger scope than they have ever done before, Manifold was pretty instrumental in some of their galaxy-wide conflicts, and he even sacrificed himself during Secret Wars. Thankfully though, he was brought back and has become one of the most powerful and versatile mutants and Avengers. Now there have been multiple Nova Primes throughout the history of the universe. Richard Rider is absolutely the main one, and he is fantastic, but when we first got Samuel Alexander in Point One Number 1 in 2011, he brought just a whole different vibe. Granted, being a younger guy with some huge shoes to fill, he doesn't exude the same kind of power that Richard Rider does, but that doesn't make him any less powerful. Sam has grown into a hero all of his own. He's fought alien warlords, evil Avengers doppelgangers, and interdimensional monsters, and he absolutely deserves the Nova mantle. While he can be reckless from time to time, thanks to his youth, independence, and loyalty, he still got offered a spot on 2016's all-new, all-different Avengers #1 by none other than the God of Thunder, Thor himself. Unfortunately for the Avengers though, Nova left the team pretty soon after with a few other younger heroes to form the Champions. And one of those young heroes was none other than Miles Morales. In the aftermath of the multiversal event Secret Wars, the second Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, aka Earth 1610, joined Marvel's main Earth 616 reality, and not too long after that, he also joined the Avengers in 2016 alongside Nova and Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. Now Miles has essentially all the same abilities as Spider-Man himself, but then he has some that are wholly his own, and they're actually pretty cool. His signature difference in my eyes is his venom. It's like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like in punches, beams, and blasts, and he can even infuse it into his own webbing. Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body and even his clothes and costume go invisible, but as I already said with Nova, these younglings weren't on the Avengers team for very long, leaving to form the Champions. But for Miles, his powers and his awesome mind actually lent a lot to the Avengers while he was there, and in return, he learned a heck of a lot from the older heroes while he was on that team. The Smashers of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard are human-like aliens using exospecs to grant themselves powers. Now for a long time, Vril Rock was the Soul Smasher, but he unfortunately met his end at the hands of the incredibly powerful mutant Vulcan. Isabel Izzy Kane is the granddaughter of World War II hero and Captain America buddy, Captain Terror. She was first ever introduced in Avengers Volume 5 #1, and Izzy found the exospecs of a Smasher on the farm that she was raised on. These exospecs spoke to her and beckoned her to put them on, giving her access to the Smasher's powers. Izzy then traveled to the Shi'ar world of Chandalar, where she became a sub-guardian of the Imperial Guard. Now after returning back home to Earth, Izzy's grandfather with his last words told her to become a hero, and he gave her Captain America's business card, which, I'm sorry, that's kind of hilarious. Now being the first and only human recruit of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, gaining super strength, speed, energy blasts, and flight, plus her adventurous spirit and her grandfather's legacy, Captain America brought her onto the Avengers pretty quickly and with no contest, making her a big part of the team's spacefaring adventures. Vani Gast was the daughter of the Grand Master, one of the Elders of the Universe. She grew up exploring the cosmos by her father's side. Now when her father's title was threatened, she was granted teleportation powers that also had the added benefit of being able to alter people's memories. Vani took up the hero name Voyager and headed to Earth. Now Voyager met up with the Avengers and used her powers to insert herself into their memories as Valerie Vector, a founding member of the team who had bit the dust just in the battle against the Squadron Sinister, which had removed her from existence and from everyone's memory. The Avengers' longtime butler, Edwin Jarvis, had collapsed due to an illness shortly before Voyager's arrival, so naturally, when Voyager arrived to the hospital Jarvis had just woken up in, he exposed the truth that Voyager had never actually been an Avenger. While this obviously didn't do her any favors, and she was pretty much booted from the team, she did admit that this was all the plan of her father, while she was actually inspired by the heroes and helped the Avengers to save the day a few times. And last up, the Avengers Unity Squad, first appearing in Uncanny Avengers, was an attempt to try and mend the human-mutant conflict after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. The idea? To take some X-Men, to take some Avengers, and just put them together. It's kind of surprising that it really hasn't been done before. Now, one of the first main recruits, handpicked by Captain America himself in Uncanny Avengers Volume 1, Number 1 from 2012, was none other than Anna Marie, aka Rogue. Being a former villain and still mourning the loss of Charles Xavier, Rogue caused quite a bit of friction on this new team. She originally joined in order to keep an eye on the Scarlet Witch, who was also in the team of heroes, and as most of you know, caused quite a devastating blow to the mutant community with M-Day. But as time passed, Rogue became one of the most valuable members of the team, even growing to become its leader. But if we are talking about most powerful, while Rogue was on this team, she managed to absorb all the major Marvel heroes' powers and fought off a Celestial. So I'd say that's pretty darn powerful.
Captain America. I know it feels weird to have Cap in a 10th spot on any list about power, but remember who he's up against. Captain America's best trait is his unmatched leadership stat, which for superheroes is a really important angle to consider. But on a list about individual power, I'd say it only goes as far as who he's actually leading and ultimately fighting alongside. But without his strategic advantage, Captain America is still an extremely powerful Avenger and beats out plenty of other contenders that didn't make the list. The combination of his impressive fighting skill and his advanced strength levels is good enough to garner attention, but of course his vibranium shield is what really brings him to another level. Vibranium is a metal that actually absorbs all energy and contains it entirely. This means that whatever the shield is hit with, the metal itself will absorb the recoil almost entirely. Not to mention, it can pack a serious punch when it's thrown and will return to Steve's hand on command. This gives Cap a huge offensive and long-range advantage when he isn't showing off his massively impressive hand-to-hand combat skills. At number 9 is the one and only Spider-Man. It was tough to decide where to put Spidey on this list because he's so versatile, but he's also quite young and inexperienced. Well, at least he's supposed to be. But what really puts him at one ranking higher than the almighty Captain America are his Spidey senses and his healing factor. These two abilities really give Spidey the edge and help to define him as a more agile and crafty hero than many of the others on the list. Where Spider-Man might lack in sheer power, he makes up for in his adept precision and dexterity. And while he may not pack a huge punch in some of the more advanced combat situations that the Avengers face, he doesn't let anyone get the jump on him in any case, because he can always sense what's coming and has very quick reflexes to make the next move before his opponents even realize they'd missed him. In other words, Spider-Man often plays the role of David while his opponents play the part of Goliath. Another thing that's important to note is that his suit upgrades allow him to gain huge strength boosts, expanding his power levels to a level that may never see its limit. At number 8, I'm putting Wolverine. As the most published comic book superhero ever, Wolverine has had the most experience out of anyone on this list. Not just because of all the things he's done, but also because of all the years that he has lived. His healing factor is so impressive that his age is extended by a great margin, making him appear nearly immortal. In fact, there have been a few times where Wolverine was entirely reduced to his adamantium-coated skeleton, and he was still walking around as if he'd just been a little banged up. But on top of his durability, he's also one of the most balanced heroes all around, which makes him a huge contender on a list about power. He's extremely agile, being quite skilled in acrobatics. He's got a very powerful offensive stat with his adamantium claws. He's also got a stealth stat since he's able to blend in as a civilian when his claws are retracted. He's got insane durability with his whole skeleton being coated in a metal only comparable to vibranium, and even if he takes a massive blow, his healing factor acts so fast and so efficiently that he's back to full health before he's even stood up. He's one of the big guns. At number 7, we have Shang-Chi. If this was a list of the best hand-to-hand combatants that the Avengers have ever had, I'd probably place Shang-Chi first.
I mean, he trained Spider-Man for crying out loud. But to be fair, Shang-Chi's biggest strength mainly comes with his empowerment from the 10 rings. Not only do they give him superhuman strength and durability, but he's able to use the rings as weapons. He can use them as projectiles or at close range, and can shrink and enlarge them at will, making them perfect for entrapping his enemies. And on a list about power, it's also important to consider things like flight, which Shang-Chi also gets from the rings, because during any kind of battle, one's mobility tends to go a long way in how they approach their enemies. But even without the rings, Shang-Chi still finds crafty ways to show off his extreme power, like during the Infinity storyline when he uses Pym particles to grow the size of a dragon and takes it out without the help of the rings. At number 6, we have one of the most important members of the Avengers and my personal favorite, Iron Man. What could I say to try and convince you of Iron Man's placement on this list? Well, my favorite way of describing Iron Man's sheer power level is that it's technically uncapped. Tony Stark's biggest trait is his immense intellect, which shouldn't necessarily be considered on a list about power as a standalone ability. But when that intellect is able to produce the Iron Man suit, the War Machine suit, and every iteration of spider armor, as well as not to mention the Hulk Buster armor, it surely should be considered. So I say that his power potential doesn't have a ceiling, only because if he's not the most powerful on this list right now, there's plenty of room for him to improve down the line with his inventions. But as he stands, he's still got his own AI system Jarvis, integrated into an all-powerful Iron Man armor which is outfitted with near endless ballistics and energy weaponry. And I'd argue that Iron Man has a certain level of omnipotence as well, because his systems are always tapped into external sources that support him in battle, like drones or even backup armor upgrades on the fly. Okay, at number 5 is Black Panther. T'Challa is not to be messed with, and it's not just because most of his gear is outfitted with all the vibranium anyone could ever hope for. He's also got a level of dexterity and stealth that brings his combat abilities to another level. This could be seen in the comics when he's able to take down Namor not once, but twice, or when he also finds a way to take out the Silver Surfer, which is an insanely impressive feat on its own. But what puts Black Panther above Iron Man for me is that he's got a similar intellect and employs it almost more impressively at times. He's able to create similarly ingenious pieces of technology to Stark, and much of the time totally on the fly. Like the one time when he creates a device on the spot that blocks Thanos' synapses in his mind, knocking him out there and then, at least for a time. But this is a big moment that shouldn't be ignored. Considering he's capable of this level of technological aptitude, and he's a superpowered being on top of it, it just gives him that extra edge over Iron Man for me. And that comes from a huge Iron Man stan. Although Black Panther is in my top 3 as well. At number 4, we have Hercules. I want to acknowledge that Ares could also easily hold this spot, but I figured that the list only had room for one Greek god. And having been teased in Thor Love and Thunder's post-credit sequence, it's looking like Hercules is set to appear in an upcoming MCU project. And it's about time. Hercules is one of the few characters that has ever been able to contend on an even keel as Thor, which I think speaks to how powerful he is in the comics. Son of the god of lightning, Zeus, Hercules is known as the god of strength, which should be enough to put him on this list to begin with. But what could also convince you would be, I don't know, that one time when he picks up all of Manhattan while facing off against Thor, or the time when he destroys the Thor clone in Civil War, which acts as a turning point for Cap's army. If that's not enough to convince you though, Hercules is also known to run at speeds above 100 miles per hour. Even though most people associate Hercules with Greek mythology, he has a very lengthy run with the Avengers and proves himself as one of their most powerful members ever. At number 3 is Nova. Being basically the protector of the cosmos, Richard Rider's Nova had to make it into the top 20. Being one of the primary members of the intergalactic law enforcement agency, Nova brings a cosmic level of power to the Avengers. And the main ability that really puts him above the rest is his power absorption, which is capable of using an enemy's power against them. And the limits of this power are yet to be truly maxed out, meaning that I'm not sure if we can even know the extent of his power level quite yet. But considering he's been able to weaponize gravity itself with this ability, I'd say there aren't even really limits at all. Of course, when he takes in power, it has to go somewhere, and it's usually emitted as a highly powerful energy beam that can be aimed at any nearby or distant targets. In prime form, he's also been known to to travel at near light speeds, which is verging on speedster level. One of his most notable feats is when he sacrifices himself by trapping himself and Thanos in the Cancerverse. This just shows his immense influence and how far he'd go as a protector of not only Earth, but the cosmos as a whole. At number 2 is Gilgamesh. You know that at least one of the Eternals had to make it onto this list, so here he is. Gilgamesh doesn't have a long run as part of the Avengers, but the short time he gives to them is enough to put him nice and high up on this list. Now, most superheroes tend to have superhuman strength and land somewhere on the scale measured in the amount of tons they can lift usually, but we can basically just throw that scale in the garbage because Gilgamesh is off the charts in his strength stat. His strength level is on par with that of Hercules and Thor, only maybe being usurped by the Hulk himself. But on top of his extreme strength level, he is also capable of flight, energy blasts, and a certain level of energy manipulation, which, when all paired together, makes for a massive powerhouse who beats out many of the other members of the Avengers. Finally, at number 1 is a hero who could have arguably made the part 1 of this video, Captain Marvel. Born as a human, Carol Danvers' DNA is fused with Kree genes, thus turning her into a next level superpowered being. Being able to fly 6 times the speed of sound and having an adept energy manipulation skill, there's no wonder why Captain Marvel is considered one of the most valuable members to ever grace the Avengers. Whether she's destroying asteroids with a single punch or surviving an HLA energy bomb, Captain Marvel seems to be everywhere at once. And she sort of can be, given her insane speed and near omniscience with her flash precognition ability. This power allows her to anticipate events all across the cosmos from wherever she is, which is part of what makes her stand out as one of the foremost protectors of the cosmos. It's also just really helpful in anticipating the moves of her opponents before they make them. And although she does acquire this power when she's turned into binary, there are still remnants of it within her to this day.
Hercules was the son of Zeus, king of Olympian gods, and Alcmena of Thebes in ancient Greece. He was born as the result of Zeus seducing Alcmena and under the guise of being her husband. Due to his Olympian lineage, Hercules was born with the potential for extraordinary human strength, you know, because he's the son of a god. Zeus's wife Hera grew jealous of this adultery, but Alcmena tried to appease the goddess by naming her child Heracles, or Glory of Hera. The child was first abandoned outside the city, and when Athena and Hera found it, Hera decided to feed the infant Hercules with her divine breast milk. While Hera breastfed the child, Hercules' godly strengths harmed her when he bit down harder on her breast and then she flung him away. Oh, that's so funny. He was returned to the city and accepted by his birth mother and her husband. However, Hera then sent 2 serpents to kill the child, but even at only 1 year old, he had superhuman strength and strangled both the snakes with his bare hands like a pure badass. And we love that kind of energy and we need it in the MCU. Imagine that story on the silver screen. Oh man. And at 9, Namor. In 1915, Ernest Shackleton, sent by Winston Churchill, sought out vibranium in the Antarctic. His ship, the Endurance, was lost. Later, Leonard Mackenzie and the telepath Paul Destin as a passenger attempted to recover the vibranium, but Princess Sven was sent to investigate explosions near the surface by her father, Emperor Thakor. Mackenzie met, fell in love with, and impregnated Princess Sven with the child who then became Namor. However, Atlantean soldiers came to retrieve Fen and attack Mackenzie's crew. Leonard Mackenzie was believed dead by Fen following the attack, and she returned to Atlantis pregnant. The child was named Namor, which means avenging son, so I feel like you can see where this is going. During Namor's youth, he traveled as part of the Atlantean diplomatic mission to the Orkney Reefs, the seasonal capital of the Chasm People, where he encountered the prince of the Chasm People, Atuma, for the first time. The two initially developed a rivalry, but still, they set aside their differences and began developing a friendship for the sake of peace between their people. It's good in the long run. And at 8, She-Hulk. I know what you're gonna say, okay? Just hear me out. Jennifer Walters is a talented lawyer and the cousin of Bruce Banner, the Hulk. After being shot by a mobster and seriously injured, she was saved by a blood transfusion from Bruce, and his gamma-radiated blood mutated Jennifer into the sensational She-Hulk, kicking off her adventuring career. Jen wasn't as strong as her cousin, but she maintained her intelligence as the She-Hulk, soon learning to control her transformations and even embracing her green form. Throughout the years, Jen fought for justice in court and on the streets, developing great rivalries and friendships, and growing to become a respected leader. She worked for the district attorney and also fought crime as a member of countless teams, namely the world famous Avengers and Fantastic Four. During a recent confrontation with Thanos though, She-Hulk took a missile to the chest and was critically injured by the Mad Titan. Needing immediate medical assistance, she managed to recover, but the stress from the fight with Thanos, added to the loss of her cousin, caused Jen to transform into her savage Grey Hulk persona. After therapy, she managed to go back to being green though. So, I mean, like, if She-Hulk can do it, maybe I should go to therapy too. And I know She-Hulk is already coming to the MCU thanks to her Disney Plus series, but I figured I'd include her anyway. Hence why she's at number 8, because she is already coming. But she's not gonna be on like the big screen yet, as far as we know, so. And it's Civic Quasar. Wendell Vaughn was born in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, but raised in Oshkosh. He had served in the US Army with distinction, eventually being promoted to lieutenant. After the Army, he applied to join the SHIELD Academy. He graduated with full honors, but his record stated that he lacked the so-called killer instinct needed to be a field agent. Assigned to routine guard duty at the Stark International Project, studying the quantum bands, he watched as the bands were field tested by William Wesley, SHIELD's top tech jockey, who panicked when the bands would not come off and then disintegrated himself. Not an hour later, androids were sent by the criminal organization AIMS, and they staged a raid. Their objective was to steal those alien energy bands. To protect them though, Vaughn put on the bands and learned the fundamentals of their operation under the most hazardous possible conditions. Still, he managed to hold back the AIM invasion, and ultimately it was his lack of killer instinct that enabled him to subdue the rampant energies that he had unleashed by putting on the bands. So, kinda wanna see this, let's be honest. That'd be pretty sick. And it's 6, Nova. Richard Rider was born in Hempstead, New York, and as a teenager he was chosen at random by the alien Roman Day, last surviving Centurion of the planet Xandar's elite Nova Corps, to inherit his power and succeed him in the rank of Nova Prime. Following the destruction of his world by the intergalactic pirate Zor, having been mortally wounded in the battle that tore Xandar apart, Day succeeded in tracking Zor to Earth, but he was unable to exact vengeance himself due to the existence of his injuries, because you know, you can't really kill someone when you're dying. Well, I mean you can, but it's harder. At death's door, Day had little choice but to transfer his power to an unsuspecting human on the planet below, gambling that whoever he found would be willing to take up his cause and prove worthy of the powers that he had given the recipient, which I gotta say, weirdest lottery ever. The sudden infusion of powers overloaded Ryder's body and he was hospitalized. While Ryder was comatose, the moribund Roman Day explained to him telepathically what had happened to him and what his mission was. Ryder's recovery was as sudden as his incapacitation had been, preceded by eye blasts that knocked a doctor out of the room. He was then discharged. Nova's higher on this list because they're actually most likely to appear in the MCU thanks to the Guardians. I mean, most likely aside from She-Hulk because she's already guaranteed, but yeah. Halfway through into number 5, Wonder Man. After being found guilty of embezzlement, Williams agreed to become a test subject for Zemo's ionic ray treatment, a process that would endow him with superhuman strength and durability. After undergoing the arduous chemical and radiation treatments, Williams emerged with the attributes he was promised. Zemo then gave him a costume, dubbed him Wonder Man, and outlined his plan to use him to defeat his foes, the Avengers. To ensure Wonder Man's cooperation though, Zemo told him that a side effect of the treatment that gave him superhuman powers was that it had altered his metabolism so that he would die within the week, unless he was given regular treatments of an unspecified antidote, which Zemo would provide. Not wishing to die, Wonder Man agreed to Zemo's plan, and in a staged battle with the Masters of Evil, he won the confidence of the Avengers. When he explained to them that he was dying, the Avengers accepted Wonder Man into their ranks and unsuccessfully tried every means of science known to them to cure him. Soon enough, Wonder Man led the Avengers into an ambush by the Masters of Evil, but in the course of the battle, Wonder Man had an attack of conscience and decided that he didn't want to betray the Avengers' kindness to him, even if it cost him his life. And at 4, Red Hulk. General Thaddeus E. Thunderbolt Ross, the man who would become the most frequent nemesis of the superhuman monster known as the Incredible Hulk, is also the Red Hulk, which is pretty weird. Born to the Rosses, a New Hampshire family with a proud tradition of military service, during World War II, Ross rose rapidly among the ranks and was a captain when he went to fight overseas in the Pacific Theater of Operations. It was during the war that Ross made his great reputation as a leader in combat. General Ross made an illegal bargain with the Abomination though, that he would have the Abomination cured and free freed if he could capture the Hulk. The Abomination failed this task, but Ross would try this again twice more for some reason. Ross's daughter Betty was later killed by the Abomination, and the Hulk was exiled off of Earth by a group of superheroes. The grief of his daughter's death, along with the lacking of purpose now that there was no Hulk on Earth to fight, led Thaddeus to spiral. 3 of Ross's evil allies used the body and the energy that they had siphoned from the Hulk to turn Ross into the monstrous Red Hulk, a red-skinned beast with similar size and strength to that of the regular Hulk, but with the ability for Ross to consciously transform between his human form and Red Hulk at any time he chooses. Getting close to the end in number 3, Hyperion. Hailing from Earth 13034, the super being that would come to be known as Hyperion came to Earth as a baby, sent as the only survivor of the race of Eternals from a dying world. A human named Father raised him under the name of Marcus Milton, teaching him the morals of society. As an adult, he would become the superhero known as Hyperion and protected the world along with a team of superheroes known as the Squadron Supreme. Basically, this guy is meant to be Marvel's version of Superman. The group of scientists known as AIM from another universe managed to pull him into their reality, and then he would spend most of his time in their captivity, until he was freed by the Avengers, who offered him a place in their ranks. His first mission as an Avenger was to rescue the captured members that were being held by Ex Nihilo, Abyss, and Eleth. After rescuing them, he returned to Earth and then kept working with the Avengers because, you know, he's basically Superman, so he was useful. I just want to see him in the MCU because I want Henry Cavill to play him. That'd be funny. But ultimately, in at number 2, Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. From an early age, it was realized that Adam was a child prodigy. Adam was a former fullback at Cornell University who graduated and then ended up getting 2 PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. Adam later became the project lead on a scientific attempt to harness antimatter through the creation of a negative reactor, which created a bridge between the negative zone and the positive matter universe itself. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. This reactor would then allow for almost unlimited source of clean energy by allowing devices to tap into the energy created by a stable event horizon balanced between the positive and negative universes. It's very comic science-y. Due to the unexpected explosion of the reactor though, both Adam and Connor Sims, aka Anti-Man, were subjected to mutagenic radiation generated by the unstable event horizon. When Sims' body disassembled into energy, Brashear became a stable antimatter reactor and developed a set of superhuman abilities. As the Blue Marvel, Adam wore a full-face helmet, but when it was damaged in a battle, Adam's identity was revealed. A massive controversy ensued as the America of 1962 was too racist to accept a black Superman. The president reluctantly decided to ask Adam to step back, and torn between a myriad of considerations, the Blue Marvel conceded. Considering the direction that Falcon and the Winter Soldier went, discussing race and how Isaiah Bradley was treated, I wouldn't be surprised to see Blue Marvel introduced into the MCU. And finally, in at number 1, Sentry. Sentry is an absolute powerhouse, so it's no surprise that I want him in the MCU to fight whatever threat is coming up next, assuming it isn't really Kang, because at this point I feel like that's a red herring. Sentry has even fought and beaten Ares, which is already impressive, but how he did it is even better. Sentry used to be a part of Norman Osborn's Avengers, who went to Asgard in an attempt to lay siege and claim it, because, you know, it's Norman Osborn's Avengers. However, the Marvel version of the Greek god of war didn't like that idea, so after he learned of Osborn's intentions, he came down to kill the Green Goblin. But Ares did not anticipate Sentry's absolute monster arms, even when Sentry picked him up and tore Ares in half. Like, how the absolute living hell?
A member of the Eternals, Cersei has been perfecting her craft for tens of thousands of years and has spent a decent amount of time as an Avenger. First introduced in the Eternals number 3, she ends up officially joining the Avengers in Avengers number 314. Some say she joins out of interest in protecting the world and its inhabitants from harm, but others say it's because she's in love with Captain America. Regardless, without even considering her strength yet, her invulnerability is impressive enough. It's understood that the only way to kill Cersei is by reducing her to atoms and scattering them throughout the cosmos. And on top of this is her impressive ability known as transmutation, which allows her to change the molecular structure of her targets, which is a pretty fun power. Anywhere from turning enemies into jelly to disintegrating air itself to creating sentient life out of nothing, Cersei just had to appear on this list. At number 9 is Vision. Now, if you're more familiar with the MCU than the comics, you may know Vision as more of a tragic character, but Vision is anything but that in the comics, from his power levels to his unique origin story. In Avengers number 57, Vision is still created by Ultron, but his body is formed using Horton cells to replace human anatomy, and his consciousness is made to replicate that of Wonder Man and a little bit of Alex Lipton. Then once he sets off to tear apart the Avengers, he disobeys his orders and instead joins them, becoming one of the leading members as a result. And it's quite the acquisition for the Avengers because Vision is widely considered one of the most powerful of all time. For example, that one time when he increases his density and turns himself into a meteorite to take out Nefaria in Avengers number 166, or how he proves his worthiness of Mjolnir in the MCU, which is a huge moment for any hero, especially in AI. He's also got his extremely powerful energy blasts, his incorporeal form that he can use on command, and immortality. If he isn't ever destroyed, he will basically survive as long as his parts get repaired every once in a while. And plus, he's just a very pragmatic hero, capable of using heightened intelligence to keep emotions out of every decision he makes. At number 8, we have Wonder Man. Where do we begin with this guy? Well, firstly, for those of you who don't know, Wonder Man is another case where he initially fights against the Avengers before coming around and joining them. Wonder Man is essentially immortal, having been resurrected from temporary deaths multiple times and getting stronger each time, might I add. He is an ionic powered being who doesn't age and doesn't need oxygen, food, or water to survive. But that's just speaking to his invulnerability. He's also a shapeshifter with adept teleportation and martial arts abilities. He's known to be in the 100-ton strength class, putting him up there in power levels with the Sentry, the Hulk, and Thor. Oh yeah, and he can't be infected by a symbiote, which is great news for the Avengers, who would basically be done for if that happened. Some of his more impressive feats include knocking out Hercules, Namor, and Abomination, as well as holding off the Thing, and of course taking down Ultron with his bare hands. The only thing holding Wonder Man back is his inflated ego and insecurities about his powers, as well as his somewhat vague sense of right and wrong at times, but that's not much of a downside considering how powerful this Avenger is. At number 7, we have the World Breaker himself, the Incredible Hulk. Need I expound on this one? The Hulk has always been known as one of the Avengers' most valuable assets, and even with his weakness being that he lacks control over his actions, his power level alone outbalances that shortcoming by a long shot. Besides, part of what makes the Hulk so important to the team is that he's unhinged. If he actually had a conscience, it would be argued that he wouldn't exude quite as much strength at times, considering a lot of it is confused rage induced. In Marvel Comics Presents number 52, he destroys an asteroid twice the size of Earth, he tears the fabric of reality in The Incredible Hulk number 126, and during Secret Wars he holds up a mountain range on his own to protect his fellow Avengers. And as often as he causes problems for Earth, he has also protected it from cataclysmic events many times, like the time when he prevents an earthquake with his own hands. This hero is probably the strongest on the list in terms of brute fighting strength, and if we'd made this list about 20 years ago, he'd probably be in the top 3. But these days, there are just more to come that simply deliver just a little bit more than sheer brute strength. Like Hyperion, who's in our number 6 spot. Known by some as the Superman of Marvel, Hyperion has a ridiculously impressive power set and a very complex motivation for heroism. Although there are plenty of different iterations of this hero, the one most commonly known to be an Avenger originates from a recently destroyed universe. And what's more is that he has to relive this experience in his mind repeatedly due to his non-linear light-based memory. This is important to note on a list about power because it really explains why this hero puts so much into his work as a superhero, to create happier memories for him to experience in perpetuity. But an even better gauge for his powers are his feats as a hero, such as the time when he lifts Atlantis, yes the city, and destroys it single-handedly before beheading Namor in 2016 Squadron Supreme number 1. He's also got extreme speed while flying, traveling from Nevada to Sumatran and back in less than a minute. That's speed that could contend with some speedsters, and Hyperion does it while flying. At number 5 is Blue Marvel. A very underrated and underdiscussed hero given his power levels, Blue Marvel has a stint as an Avenger, and no one really talks about it. Known to be as powerful as Thor and the Hulk, Blue Marvel has redirected enormous asteroids single-handedly, as well as sending Sentry into space with one punch. But he isn't known only for his brute strength. His matter manipulation is equally powerful and impressive, giving him the ability to transmute matter at a molecular level and harness antimatter at will. This makes him an excellent support member to the Avengers as well, giving him the ability to heal the wounds of his allies. And let's be honest, a hero adept with molecular manipulation powers doesn't often also have the strength to one-shot Ultimate Hulk or three-shot King Hyperion and contend against the Avengers after just returning from a 40-year retirement. Nor do they have Reed Richards saying that they might be 3 times smarter than Dr. Doom. But Blue Marvel does. He has all of this under his belt. There's just nobody out there quite like him. Other than maybe the guy who sits in our number 4 slot, Sentry. Although he is known to be one of the more troubled and self-sabotaging heroes in the Marvel Universe, Sentry's insane power levels and diverse power set still rank him at our number 4 slot on this list. Much like Blue Marvel, Sentry has Hulk-like strength as well as transmutation abilities, except he also deals with psionic energy as well as light manipulation. And he can also regenerate his molecules from nothing, meaning that he will always exist unless someone finds a very crafty way of combating or undoing this ability. The only caveat to all this is that Sentry has this evil alter ego called the Void, who is known to be even more powerful than he is, and is known as the being to have destroyed Asgard in the Siege storyline. And even though Sentry has struggled with mental illness causing his abilities and heroic feats to be rather inconsistent, the fact of the matter is that Sentry is one of the most powerful heroes in the universe, not just the Avengers. At number 3 we have the one and only God of Thunder, Thor. These top 3 were tough for me to rank because they're such popular and fluctuating characters in both the comics and the MCU, but it's fair to say that Thor takes a spot in the top 3 based on his insane influence on the Avengers as well as his sheer power potential. Originally known to be the only other being in the Marvel Universe to contend with the Hulk, Thor has only grown stronger over the years, with plenty of other heroes filling the gap between him and the Worldbreaker. And some of these feats that he has attained have been due to his extremely lengthy existence, having been a practicing warrior for millennia. Using his belt of strength and his hammer Mjolnir, Thor is also one of the best equipped heroes in the universe. He is powerful enough to resist the gravitational pull of a neutron star, knock out the Phoenix Force with one blow, and famously take out Mangog and Thanos in back-to-back fights. I could stand here and pretend to convince you, the real fans know that the only argument here is that maybe Thor could be placed even higher on the list. That would only knock out our number 2 spot, Scarlet Witch, and I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, because this hero is just an absolute powerhouse for the Avengers. She is the daughter of Magneto, or maybe not, as of recently, but I liked it better when she was, and she possesses an extremely dangerous and powerful set of magical abilities. Known to be able to manipulate reality on a cosmic scale, Scarlet Witch's powers have grown exponentially since her introduction in the X-Men number 4 in 1964. She has famously eliminated the powers of 99% of all mutants with one whisper during the House of M storyline, which is an absolutely insane feat of power. But she's also shown that she's possibly capable of creating whole universes on command, which brings her to yet another crazy level of power. Some people might argue to put her further back on the list because of her volatility as a hero, or arguably an anti-hero, but I honestly think that her powers are just too impressive to be outweighed by her struggles to control them. In fact, I almost put her at number 1, but the top spot had to go to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange started off as a character that might not have presented as much of a powerhouse, but over time he has proven himself to be the most valuable member that the Avengers have ever had. He is capable of bending time and space on command with adept precision and can detect threats from extreme distances in space and time before they even occur. And if you take issue with this number 1 placement, just think of the scale of the forces he's faced with within his own storylines. He has to protect the world from the likes of Dormammu, Nightmare, and Yurthona, among many other godlike demons. But what really makes Doctor Strange the most powerful out of all the Avengers is that he doesn't need to contend with opposition on the plane of reality that they come to him in. He is able to view the future and decide on how he wants it to play out before changing the fabric of reality to control any outcome he's faced with. The only reason that I could imagine someone might keep him from the #1 spot these days is that he's known to have been nerfed quite a bit in the last 20 years, but even today I'd still argue that his power set puts him in the top spot. Okay, that was the list. Thank you for watching, and make sure you comment below with your own ordering. This is a big one, and I expect a lot of debate in the comment section, so let's go at it. As always, I'll do my best to respond to all of you. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I've been your host, Ben Ball. You know the rest. The giddies.